Jury not present.
The court said, "Please be seated. A few minutes ago, when I was looking for the door for the robing room, I mistakenly opened the door of the jury room. When I saw that, I simply said, 'Sorry about that,' and turned around. Is there anything that you would like me to do with respect to that?"
Mr. Finkel said, "Not from the government."
Ms. Schrofa said, "Not from the defense, Your Honor. Thank you."
The court said, "Please have the jurors return, and please have the witness come in."
Continued on next page. Jury present.
The court said, "Please be seated, and the prosecution may call its next witness."
Mr. Horton said, "Your Honor, the government calls Jenny Lee."
The court said, "You may take the stand."
Mr. Horton said, "And Your Honor, Ms. Lee will be assisted by a Mandarin language interpreter."
The law clerk said, "Please raise your right hand."
Witness sworn.
The court said, "Please be seated and state your name and spell it."
The witness said, in English, Jenny Lee. J-N-N-Y first name. Last name L-I Lee.
The court said, "Please speak into the microphone so that everyone can hear you."
The witness said, in English, sorry. My name is Jenny, first name, J-N-N-Y, first name. The last name L-I Lee.
The court said, "You may inquire."
Mr. Horton said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Jenny L.I. called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows, through a Mandarin language interpreter. Direct examination. By Mr. Horton.
Good morning, Ms. Lee.
Yes, hello.
What state do you live in?
Nevada.
Do you have any children?
Yes.
How many children do you have?
1.
And how old is your child?
36 years old.
Are you married?
Yes.
Ms. Lee, were you ever a follower of Miles Gov't?
Yes.
Are you currently a follower of Miles Gov't, Ms. Lee?
No.
Ms. Lee, do you see Miles Gov't in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Mr. Skirek said, "Your Honor, will stipulate that identification."
The court said, "All right then. Please continue."
Ms. Lee, what year was it that you first heard of Miles Gov't?
2017.
And where did you first see Miles Gov't in 2017?
I met him on April 19th for the first time.
And where did you see Miles Gov't on April 19, 2017?
Voice of America.
And what happened when Miles Gov't was on Voice of America in 2017?
So he was doing a live streaming over there and to disclose the corruption of CCP.
When you saw Miles Gov't for the first time in 2017, what, if anything, did you think about him?
At that time I didn't have any thought of him whatsoever.
And how often, if ever, Ms. Lee, did you watch Miles Govt's videos after that first time you saw him in 2017?
After that, out of curiosity, I kept watching his videos.
And you said you kept watching them. How often were you watching them?
I almost watched all his live streaming whenever available.
And what was it about these videos of Miles Govt that made you want to keep watching them?
He was disclosing the corruption of Chinese government officials and also some men and women's sexual relationships.
And in these videos, Ms. Lee, what, if anything, did Miles Govt say about his money?
He said he didn't take any money out of China.
And what, if anything, was Miles Govt wearing in these videos?
A lot of times he wearing a very nice suit, and most of the time he wearing sunglasses.
And from what location was Miles Govt broadcasting these videos?
Mr. Skirek said, "Objection, Foundation."
The court said, "Sustained."
Ms. Lee, could you tell when you watched these videos where Miles Govt was filming them?
From Place for Media.
And what kind of room was Miles Govt in these videos?
Mr. Skirek said, "Objection. We're talking about multiple videos."
The court said, "Are you asking her to describe a particular video?"
Mr. Horton said, "Let me try the question a different way, Your Honor."
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, what's the sherry?
So Miles Gov't purchased the 18th floor at Sherry, and he thought, he bought it, the 18th floor.
And where did you learn that Miles Gov't purchased the 18th floor of the Sherry?
He often mentioned it in his own livestream.
Ms. Lee, did there come a time that you heard about something called the Rule of Law Fund?
Yes.
And who did you first hear mention the Rule of Law Fund?
Miles Gov't and Bannon established this Rule of Law Foundation on November 20, 2018.
And what happened in November 2018?
So what happened? It was Gov't. Miles Gov't claimed that the executive from HNA in China, that he suddenly passed away, and Gov't claimed that he was murdered by CCP.
Ms. Lee, where, if ever, did you see Miles Gov't and Steve Bannon talk about the Rule of Law Fund?
Mr. Skerrick said, objection, form.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
YouTube.
And what did you watch on YouTube?
Miles Gov't and Bannon established this Rule of Law Foundation.
Anne.
The court said, I would like the parties and the interpreter to step up, please.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, can you do a simultaneous translation?
The interpreter said, for who?
The court said, interpreting for the witness. Instead of waiting for her to say something and then she ends and you interpret, can you do it simultaneously?
The interpreter said, but I think for the accuracy sometimes for the witness, it's always done consecutively. I can try.
The court said, I've been doing this for 24 years and I have had many cases with simultaneous translation. Some interpreters don't know how to do it. And so I'm asking you, can you do it?
The interpreter said, I can do, yes.
The court said, okay. That's what we'll do going forward.
The interpreter said, okay. Excuse me. Your Honor, and also, I have to interpret the counsel's questions simultaneously?
The court said yes.
The interpreter said, and I think I need to have a partner to work with. Because I think I cannot do alone by myself for long period of time, simultaneously.
The court said, are you saying that you cannot do simultaneous translation?
The interpreter said, I can do it simultaneously, but I need someone to take turn with me. Ms. Shrofa said, she needs to switch out.
The court said, but if you don't do the simultaneous translation, you don't need a partner?
The interpreter said, yeah. I can do maybe 2 hours, but with simultaneous mode, I need a partner.
The court said, do we have another interpreter, maybe?
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, we can check with the interpreters. Well, we can check with the interpreters. We're apparently not allowed to use the court interpreters.
The court said, that's right.
Mr. Finkel said, we can try to find someone. I don't know if we can, but we'll try.
The court said, if you make that attempt. In the meantime, you're going to do consecutive translation.
The interpreter said, okay.
Mr. Finkel said, thank you.
Mr. Horton said, thank you.
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, please continue.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor. Just one moment, please.
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee. You said you saw a video on YouTube with Miles Gov't and Steve Bannon talking about the Rule of Law Fund, is that right?
Yes.
And what, if anything, was said in this video, Ms. Lee, about how the Rule of Law Fund would be financed?
Miles Gov't said that he would donate $100 million into this Rule of Law Foundation.
And when else, if ever, Ms. Lee? Did you hear Miles Gov't talk about his donations to the Rule of Law Foundation?
He didn't say much. He was just saying that he would try to help people that disappeared in China.
And the YouTube video you mentioned where Miles Gov't talked about donating $100 million to Rule of Law. When did you see that? What year?
November 20, 2018.
And other than that 2018 video, Ms. Lee, when else, if ever? Did you see Miles Gov't talk about donating to the Rule of Law Foundation?
Mr. Skerrick said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
He said he was going to donate 100 million US dollars.
The court said, if you would please move closer to the microphone, Ms. Lee, so that you can be heard.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you display for the witness what's marked as Government Exhibit 6191? Ms. Lee, what is this document?
So this is in 2019 that he show up again for the second time. This was also on YouTube and GTV. And this is, he was saying again that he would donate 100 million US dollars. At the same time, he would match $1 to $1. To whoever make a donation, he would do the matching.
And did you watch this video, Ms. Lee?
Yes.
When did you watch it for the first time?
So first time was 2018. This was second time.
Sorry. Ms. Lee, when did you watch this video?
Mr. Skirrick said, asked and answered.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
The second time was March 29, 2019.
And where was this video clip located?
This was on YouTube.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, the government offers Government Exhibit 6191.
Mr. Skirrick said, objection. Can we have a brief sidebar?
The court said, okay.
At the sidebar.
The court said, what's the objection?
Mr. Skirrick said, Your Honor, I don't see how the witness can identify this video when he hadn't even played it for her. How she can identify it coming from a specific date. As we discussed. It's also clear that this is a bit of a much longer video, and there's been no foundation laid about the clip. Who made the clip, you know, when the clip was made, which calls into question the admissibility.
The court said, she can testify about what she saw. It is more proper for the clip to be displayed first so the witness can identify it, so please do that.
Continued on next page. In open court.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please pull up for the witness what's been marked as Government Exhibit 6192?
Mr. Skirrick said, Your Honor. I don't know if the intention is to play the clip for the jury to hear before the witness has properly identified the document.
The court said, you can show her without audio and ask whether she can identify this video in that way.
Mr. Horton said, Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Ms. Loftus, on mute, can you please scrub through the video of GX 6192?
Video played for witness. By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, do you recognize this video?
Yes.
And how do you recognize it?
So it was live-streamed Gov't on GTV, and it was the same as the previous one.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, the government would offer Government Exhibits 6191 and 192.
Mr. Skirrick said, we maintain our objection, Your Honor. If we can have one further brief sidebar.
The court said yes.
At the sidebar.
The court said, so for you to authenticate the audio also, is there a way that we can have headphones put on her, perhaps?
Mr. Horton said, What I was thinking, Your Honor, is, the audio is in Mandarin. So the jury is only going to be hearing Mandarin audio.
The court said, I don't know. Maybe there are members of the jury who speak Mandarin.
Mr. Kamraju said, The way this is, I'm sorry, Your Honor. I didn't mean to interrupt. The way I've seen this happen in trial is that there are headphones for the witness, the court and the parties. And the audio is played through the headphones, the witness can then identify it. That's just been my experience of how this is done. We have to try to authenticate audio outside the presence of the jury.
The court said, so I assume you don't have the headphones set up at the moment.
Mr. Finkel said, we don't, Your Honor. What we propose is that we can play it outside the presence of the jury at the lunch break, which is coming up. We can authenticate the audio. And in the meantime, move on. We'll come back to it after lunch.
The court said, okay.
In open court.
The court said, please continue.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, you can please take the exhibit down. We'll come back to that, Ms. Lee.
By Mr. Horton.
Did there come a time that you donated money to the Rule of Law Foundation?
Yes.
And when did you donate to the Rule of Law Foundation?
In August of 2019.
And how many times, Ms. Lee, did you donate to the Rule of Law Foundation?
I don't remember exactly how many times, but I have a rough amount, since I have receipts.
And in total, how much did you donate to Rule of Law?
6,000 something.
You said you donated for the first time in 2019. Why, if at all, Ms. Lee? Did you not donate when you first heard about Rule of Law in 2018?
Mr. Skirik said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
Ms. Lee, what reason, if any, did you donate in 2019?
The first time that I donate to the Rule of Law Fund was because the Hong Kong ELAB movement, therefore. There was a protest, a girl that I was injured. That was my first donation of fund.
And Ms. Lee, what, if anything, did Gov't say about how many people were donating to Rule of Law?
Mr. Skirik said, objection.
The court said, are you referring to the video that's in evidence?
Mr. Horton said, I was referring to, she had testified that she had watched a number of his videos over a long period of time. I was asking if she heard him say anything on that subject.
The court said, sustained.
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, between when you first saw Miles Gov't in a video in 2017 and the end of 2019. How often did you watch his videos?
Mr. Skirik said, asked and answered.
The court said you may answer.
I would watch all his live streaming whenever it's available.
And how many days a week were you watching his videos over those 2 years?
So 5 to 6 days a week. He would report to the media every very so often.
And from watching those videos, Ms. Lee, what, if anything, did Gov't say about how many people were donating to the Rule of Law Foundation?
He said many people will make the donation.
And what effect, if any, did hearing Gov't say that many people were donating have on you?
It triggered me that I should also make the donation as well.
And what about hearing Gov't say that many people were donating triggered you to make your own donations?
Because there is $100 million of the donation by him.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you could pull up for the witness what's marked as Government Exhibit VH8, please. Ms. Lee, what is this document?
This is the receipt donation, my receipt donation.
And it's your receipt donation to what, Ms. Lee?
The Rule of Law Foundation.
Mr. Horton said, Government offers Government Exhibit VH8, Your Honor.
Mr. Skirik said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit VH8 received in evidence.
Mr. Horton said, could you please publish it, Ms. Loftus?
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, what was the date of your $300 donation to Rule of Law that's shown here?
April 15th.
And what year was that?
2020.
Ms. Lee, I want to turn to May of 2020. What was GTV?
GTV is the live streaming platform and media established by Miles Gov't.
Did you watch GTV?
Yes.
And in May of 2020, Ms. Lee, what, if anything, was Miles Gov't saying about GTV?
Mr. Skirik said, objection.
The court said you may answer.
He said GTV is media that you can say whatever you want and it can grow as big as the YouTube.
Ms. Lee, what was Voice of Gov't Media?
So Voice of Gov't Media is Gov't and Way. This is the same company as the GTV. And so for which amount more than 100,000 will go to Gov't. That's, then 100,000 will go to Way.
And did there come a time, Ms. Lee, that you sent money to Voice of Gov't Media?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you show the witness what's been marked as Exhibit VH7? Ms. Lee, what is this document?
This is a check that I give him for $10,000.
And at the top left of, sorry. Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, the government would move to admit VH7.
Mr. Skirik said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit VH7 received in evidence.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, could you please publish it?
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, at the top left corner of the check is a name. Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you highlight that, please?
That's my husband's name.
Okay. And why is your husband's name on this check, Ms. Lee?
We have the same account.
For what reason were you sending $10,000 to Voice of Gov't in 2020?
So Gov't established GTV. He said this is investment in the GTV.
And was $10,000 the only money you sent to invest in GTV?
No.
How much did you invest in GTV?
20,000.
Ms. Lee, who did you communicate with at Voice of Gov't Media?
Li Hongwei.
And how did you know to communicate with Li Hongwei?
It was according to Miles Gov't said on GTV.
What English name, if any, does Li Hongwei go by?
Sarah Wei.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, could you please show the witness Government Exhibit 120? Ms. Lee, who is depicted in Exhibit 120?
Li Hongwei, Sarah Wei.
Mr. Horton said, Government offers Government Exhibit 120.
Mr. Skirek said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit 120 received in evidence.
Ms. Lee, why did you want to invest $20,000 in GTV?
I was investing in the GTV stock.
And when you sent money to Voice of Gov't, was that the only time you invested in GTV stock?
Mr. Skirek said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
There are another 2 bank wire transfers for $5,000 each time.
Ms. Lee, what did you think would happen when you invested in GTV stock?
Miles Gov't said we invested in stock of GTV, that GTV stock price will higher than YouTube. What we purchased was the original stock.
Ms. Lee, what was a farm loan?
This is another fraud, money collection scheme.
And how, if at all, did you participate in the farm loans?
I put in $60,500 in total.
And who did you first hear describe farm loans?
Miles Gov't.
And what did Miles Gov't say about farm loans?
So he said that the private funding for GTV stock is already closed, so if you want to put extra money, there's another project to put the money in, which is the farm loan.
And Ms. Lee, what, if anything, did you expect to get by making farm loans?
GTV stock.
What year did you invest $60,500 in the farm loans?
From September 2020 to November 2020.
Ms. Lee, what was G Clubs?
So G Clubs is the member of the club that registered in names of Miles Gov't.
And who did you first hear mention G Clubs?
GTV.
What, if anything, did Miles Gov't say about G Clubs?
So he said G Clubs is the member-only club that has the certain benefit for $10,000 to $50,000.
Did you spend money on G Clubs, Ms. Lee?
Yes.
How much did you spend on G Clubs?
$20,000.
What year did you spend $20,000 on G Clubs, Ms. Lee?
It was November, October, to November of 2020. I don't remember exactly. I have receipts.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, would you show Ms. Lee what's marked as VH9? Thank you, Ms. Loftus. Can you scroll through the pages of the document? Ms. Lee, what is this document?
So this is the registration or consent form for G Club's member.
Did you receive this document?
I didn't receive this document.
Ms. Lee, is your name on this document?
Yes, it's there. I filled in the form online.
Okay. And can you say where on this document your name is?
On the second row.
And what does that line say?
This row indicates my name.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, the government offers GXVH9.
Mr. Skirek said, Just a moment, Your Honor.
Counsel conferring.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, could you take it down for one moment, please? Could I have a moment, Your Honor?
The court said yes.
Mr. Horton said, thank you.
Counsel conferring.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor. If you could, Ms. Loftus, if you could put that document back up for the witness. Please.
By Mr. Horton.
And Ms. Lee, what is the date of this document, at the top, where it says sent?
November 9, 2020.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, could you just zoom in on the sent date? And Your Honor, the government offers Exhibit VH9.
Mr. Skirek said, no objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit VH9 received in evidence. By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, what is the date that this document was sent?
November 28.
Mr. Horton said, and Ms. Loftus, if you could go back to the main document. And Ms. Lee, what is this document?
This is my payment receipt.
When you sent $20,000 to G Clubs, Ms. Lee, what, if anything, were you expecting to get?
Also GTV stock.
And why were you expecting to get GTV stock for your investment in G Clubs?
Can I say it? Can I say it or?
The court said, you may answer the question.
Okay. So he said the money going to G Clubs is also can receive the stock for GTV, and also I can also enjoy the member benefit for this $20,000. I can get a discount on merchandise and also 20% off on purchasing a house.
And Ms. Lee, which of those benefits, if any, did you get?
Nothing.
Ms. Lee, if the G Club's membership were only the benefits and not the GTV stock, would you have bought it?
Mr. Skirek said, objection.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
So Ms. Lee, if you knew that by investing $20,000 in G Clubs, you would only get the benefits you described but not GTV stock, would you still have invested?
Mr. Skirek said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, sustained. Don't answer.
Mr. Horton said, may I have a moment, Your Honor?
The court said you may.
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, you said that he described benefits in GTV stock for G Club's memberships. Who was he?
So all the names that have G in front, that is the G member.
And when you say the G member,
that is Gwangui member.
My question is withdrawn. Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, at this point I'm going to move on to a different topic. I'm happy to do that. Or if you'd like to take the break, I just want to.
The court said, even though it's only 11:29, we will take our break now. So you'll come back at noon. Remember, don't discuss the case amongst yourselves, don't do any research, and don't listen to any reports or any descriptions concerning this case.
Continued on next page. Jury not present.
The court said, so we turn now to the authentication of the video. How long of a clip did you plan to play?
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, I think the total clip is about 2.5 minutes. But I think we can authenticate it by playing a portion of that.
The court said, all righty. If you'll be seated. Thank you.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you bring up for the witness, please, GX 6192?
The court said, before we start, is there any objection to playing a portion as opposed to the full clip?
Mr. Skirek said, Your Honor, it's the defense's position that to identify it, you should be playing the full clip.
The court said, okay, so you'll play the full clip.
Mr. Horton said, okay. And Ms. Loftus, with the audio on, could you please play this clip?
Video played. By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, what is the video that we just watched?
So this is the second time that I saw Miles Gwa. He said he was going to donate $100 million into the Rule of Law Fund.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, the government offers GX 6192 and 191.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibits 6191, 6192 received in evidence.
The court said, so we will return at noon to continue with the direct examination of the witness. Ma'am, you're not permitted to discuss this case during the break.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, if I may, briefly, just before we leave. One of the last questions I asked. Your Honor sustained an objection to asked and answered. And actually, now that I think about what I'm about to say, I wonder if it's better for the witness to leave before I ask the court about this.
The court said yes, if you'll step out now and return, ready to walk into the courtroom at noon.
Witness not present.
The court said go ahead.
Mr. Horton said, Thank you, Your Honor. Just two brief matters. The first is that Your Honor sustained an asked and answered objection to a question I asked Ms. Lee about. It was a hypothetical about a fact that was in evidence. About whether she would have invested in G clubs, and it had been asked and answered. And I just want to explain why I asked it again. It was also an improper, I'm sorry. It was also a compound question. So it was not.
The court said, what kind of question?
Mr. Horton said, a compound question. I asked her, if you had only gotten the benefits and not the stock, would you have still invested? So it was a poorly constructed question, and I apologize for that. The reason I repeated a variation of the question, but it was substantively similar. After Your Honor sustained the asked and answered objection, is that I had a basis to believe that the question was not properly translated to Miss Lee. And that's based on what I've heard Ms. Lee say about her purposes for investing in G clubs. And so my purpose was not simply to sort of blow through Your Honor's sustained objection. I think what I did is, in asking it in a compound way through the translator and as a hypothetical, I just offered a very poorly constructed question. What I would ask the court's permission to do is ask her if she knew she wouldn't get stock in GTV. Would she have invested in G clubs? Take the compound out of it and just ask her that hypothetical that is consistent with the court's pretrial rulings on hypotheticals to victims.
Mr. Kamraju said, Your Honor, you swore in the interpreter to interpret faithfully. Mr. Horton is not a Mandarin expert. And I don't think he's allowed to second-guess the interpretation without any basis simply because he may have gotten a different answer during prep.
The court said, I don't believe that the interpreter was sworn.
Mr. Kamraju said, well, that may be, Your Honor. Maybe I assumed that because that's what I understand the normal practice is. But either way, I don't think that Mr. Horton is entitled to second-guess the interpretation without a basis other than he got a different answer when he asked the question before.
The court said, so you're stuck with the interpretation unless you have a basis based upon the language itself, as opposed to expecting a different answer.
Mr. Horton said, so, Your Honor. What I would ask is that the court exercise its discretion to permit me to ask a different question. Which is not the compound question that I think led to the confusion, which is just, if you had known that you wouldn't get GTV stock, which is a fact in evidence, would you have invested? And that is almost word for word the hypotheticals that we put in our motions in limine for hypotheticals to be posed to victims. Just, it's a different question. It strips out the compound nature of the first one. And just ask it once and move on.
Mr. Kamraju said, it's the same question, just stripping out a detail. It's not, the substance of the question is the same. He's merely trying to strip out a detail to make it sound like it's a different substantive question, Your Honor. Which is the same thing Your Honor sustained on cross-examination before.
The court said, I'll think about it. We'll come back at noon.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor.
Luncheon recess. Afternoon session 12 p.m.
The court said, my ruling is that you cannot ask the proposed question. Would you bring the jurors in?
Jury present.
The court said, please be seated. Remember that you're still under oath. You may continue your inquiry.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Loftus. Could you please pull up for the witness what's marked as Government Exhibit 191? And this document is in evidence. Your Honor. Could you please publish it for the jury, Ms. Loftus?
The court said, I don't believe the jurors have had the benefit of hearing that it's been admitted.
Mr. Horton said, I was going to ask her a few questions about it.
The court said, oh, you plan to continue your inquiry. Go ahead.
Mr. Horton said, yes, a few questions about the document. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus has published Government Exhibit 6-191, which is in evidence.
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, what is this document?
So this is the live streaming of Miles Gwa, that he said he will donate $100 million and $1 million from his family fund.
And the document says YouTube on it. Whose YouTube account is this?
Mr. Skirik said, objection.
The court said, excuse me?
Mr. Horton said, the question was whose YouTube account is shown on this document?
The court said you may answer.
Miles Gwa.
And Ms. Lee, what on here indicates that this is Miles Gwa's YouTube account?
So there is the button indicated, and there was his headshot on the right.
Ms. Lee, to the right of the image you're describing, it says 451K subscribers. What does that mean?
This is his supporter that who register.
And Ms. Lee, did you watch Miles Gwa's videos on YouTube?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please show what's in evidence as GX192, and publish it for the jury, please?
The court said, all right. Just to be clear, did you have any further authentication questions?
Mr. Horton said, not authentication questions, Your Honor.
The court said, so you're asking that the video be admitted?
Mr. Horton said, I believe Your Honor admitted 191 and 192 before the break.
The court said, for the benefit of the jury, it is admitted.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Loftus, can you play a portion of video at?
Video played.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Ms. Loftus. You can stop there. Ms. Lee, did you watch this video before?
Yes.
And what effect, if any, did watching this video have on your decision to donate to Rule of Law?
So it facilitating to donate money. He said the family fund is $1 billion, and he already donate $100 million.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, can I have one moment, please?
The court said you may.
Counsel conferred.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Loftus, you can please take this exhibit down.
The court said, you mentioned 191. Is that 191?
Mr. Horton said, so 191 was the screen grab of YouTube.
The court said yes.
Mr. Horton said, and this is 192, which is the video.
The court said, is the actual video?
Mr. Horton said, yes.
The court said, understood. So they are both admitted.
Mr. Horton said, they are, Your Honor.
The court said, go ahead.
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, I'm going to shift gears. Who is Lu Jiame?
Her internet name is Dowdo.
The interpreter said, the interpreter would like to verify.
So she was also one of the member of Gov't Media.
And what year did you first hear about Lu Jiame?
2020.
And what did you first hear about Lu Jiame?
So it was about that Lu Jiame invested $40,000 into Gov't Media, and she asked for a refund.
The court said, one moment please. Counsel, please step up.
Continued on next page. At sidebar.
The court said, so I was just made aware that Rule 604 requires an interpreter to take an oath. And I don't have any oath on record. And so it is appropriate that she take the oath. But the question is whether or not the defense will challenge whatever she interpreted before taking the oath.
Mr. Kamraju said, can I have just 1 minute to consult with Ms. Shroff?
Counsel conferred.
Mr. Kamraju said, I think obviously our struggle, Your Honor, is since we don't speak the language. It's a little hard for us to know whether we think she's been interpreting properly. Could I have 1 minute to just consult with my client to see if he hasn't raised an issue. But I just want to make sure that he hasn't raised an issue with the interpretation.
The court said, of course.
Mr. Kumraju said, which might inform us.
Ms. Shrofa said, I just need to talk to him.
Counsel conferred. Counsel conferred with defendant.
Mr. Kumraju said, thank you, Your Honor. Just making sure nothing has changed in the interim.
Pause.
Mr. Kumraju said, if Your Honor wants to swear in the interpreter now. The defense isn't going to challenge the previous testimony. Mr. Gov't says he understood it.
The court said, so I am sorry for the error.
Mr. Kumraju said, I should have caught it too, Your Honor.
The court said, I did exclusively trial work, every single day trial work in the state court, where there is not that requirement, and so it did not occur to me. It has never been raised to me during my 11 years here, so I wasn't aware of the rule, and yes, she should be sworn now.
Mr. Kumraju said, does Your Honor intend to do that? I might suggest doing it outside the presence of the jury so it doesn't seem strange.
The court said yes. Right.
Mr. Finkel said, should we just do it in the side?
Mr. Kumraju said, it's up to Your Honor.
The court said, do you have any objection to my doing it after the witness's testimony is done? Or do you want me to?
Mr. Kumraju said, my only concern about that is.
Ms. Shrofa said, we have no objection, Your Honor. We don't have an objection, Your Honor. And if our client had had difficulty with the translation, we would have raised it with the court. Because that would have been our obligation. So I just don't want there to be any sense that,
Mr. Kumraju said, if Your Honor wants to do it at the end of the day, I don't know if this witness plans to carry over at this rate or.
Mr. Horton said, no.
Ms. Shrofa said, you know what, Your Honor? You can just swear in. We don't need to hear it. If you want to do it at the sidebar, it's perfectly all right with us.
The court said, all right. So please bring her over then.
Mr. Kumraju said, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I should have caught it too. I've done plenty of foreign language trials.
Mr. Finkel said, the government apologizes as well. We should have caught this too. We're all just doing our best here.
Interpreter present.
The court said, would you please state your name?
The interpreter said, Sarah Chang.
The court said, what is your preparation as far as being an interpreter?
The interpreter said, preparation?
The court said yes. Your schooling?
The interpreter said, oh, yes. I got my MBA, yes. And I was in professional translation industry for more than 20 years.
The court said, do you swear or affirm that the translation and interpretation up until now of this witness and going forward of this witness is a true interpretation and translation of what she has said in Mandarin?
The interpreter said, yeah, to the best of my knowledge.
The court said, so you are fluent in both Mandarin and English?
The interpreter said, yes.
The court said, any questions from counsel?
Mr. Finkel said, not from the government.
Mr. Kumraju said, not from us, Your Honor.
The court said, okay. Thank you.
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, you may continue.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor.
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, in 2020, what, if anything, did Miles Gov't say about Liu Jiamei?
So he said Liu Jiamei asked for a refund. She was the agent sent by CCP.
And at the time, what did you think about Liu Jiamei?
I believe whatever he said.
And when you say, he, who are you referring to?
Miles Gov't.
Ms. Lee, did you travel to Hawaii in 2020?
Yes.
And why did you travel to Hawaii in 2020?
To protest at Dowdu, Liu Jiamei.
And how many other people, if any, went with you to protest Liu Jiamei in Hawaii?
I don't remember the exact number, but it was about 23 to 25 people.
And who, if anybody, told that group of people to go protest Liu Jiamei in Hawaii?
Miles Gov't.
What did you see at the protests of Lu Jiame in Hawaii?
I didn't see anything.
And what happened at the protest of Lu Jiame in Hawaii?
So there was some propaganda printout. And also claiming that Lu Jiame and her husband were Chinese CCP agent.
And Ms. Lee, when else, if ever, did you go to a protest organized by Miles Guo?
Mr. Skirik said, objection.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
And when else did you go to a protest?
Texas.
How long were you in Texas for the protest?
29 days.
And how many people did you go to that Texas protest with?
So I don't remember the exact number, but what I saw was $200 to $300, sorry, 200 to 300 people, they are taking turns.
And what, if anything, did you pay for at those protests?
So I attend the events of my hotel expenses. And I also at the events some expenses for other people.
And about how much money did you spend at the protest in Texas in 2020?
I spent about $10,000. And I don't have all the receipts, I only have receipt for $7,000.
Ms. Lee, turning back to Lu Jiame. What did you do when you got back from the protests against Lu Jiame in Hawaii?
When I was home, I was stay at home. I was very scared.
And why were you very scared when you got back from the protests in Hawaii?
So because she was accused of being CCP's agents after requesting for a refund.
And what were you seeking a refund of when you were accused of being a CCP agent?
Mr. Skirik said, objection. Misstates testimony.
The interpreter said, sorry. Can you say again?
The court said, one moment. Sustained.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor. When you were scared after the protests, what did you do?
I stayed at home for 2 months straight, didn't go out at all.
And why did you stay at home for almost 2 months straight?
When I came back from Hawaii was December 12th, and Way's Farm was dismissed on December 15th.
Ms. Lee, you said Way's Farm? What was Way's Farm?
So this is the first farm that Miles Guo allowed to. This is the first one that Guo and Wei Miles Guo allowed to open underneath him.
And what, if anything, was the name of Way's Farm?
To collect money, just to collect money.
Ms. Lee, did Way's Farm have a name?
There were 2 names.
What were those names?
The first name is called US West Farm.
And what's the second name?
Phoenix Farm.
And what, if anything, did you do with those farms, the West Coast Farm and the Phoenix Farm?
They are the same boss.
And how, if at all, did you participate in that farm?
There's no activities, is only at Discord.
And what is Discord?
Is also a so-called, maybe social media.
You said Way's Farm. Who is Wei?
Li Hong Wei.
Is Li Hong Wei also Sarah Wei?
Yes, the same person.
Ms. Lee, what, if anything, was the connection between Sarah Wei's Farm and Voice of Guo Media?
Same leader. 1 leader. And 2 companies.
Now, Ms. Lee, you said that Sarah Wei's Farm closed in December 2020?
Yes.
How did you find out that Sarah Wei's Farm was closing?
So it was announced at the Discord phone that where everybody gathered together.
And what understanding did you have, if any, about who Sarah Wei reported to?
Sarah Wei's boss is Miles Guo.
What was your reaction, Ms. Lee, to hearing that Sarah Wei's farm was closing?
So before that, Guo and Wei allowed her to open the farm and I thought my money is gone.
Why did the farm closing make you think your money would be gone?
I thought Sarah would take the money and go away.
Did there come a time, Ms. Lee, that Miles Guo spoke about the closure of the farm?
So Miles Guo, he gather other people from the farm, and at the Discord have a private meeting.
And were you in that private meeting?
I was in the meeting. I was there every single day.
And what, if anything, did you do while that meeting with Miles Guo was happening?
I want to hear how he want to deal with this matter.
And were you there for the whole meeting?
Yes.
What day was Guo's meeting on Discord about the closure of the farm?
So he said that meeting was on December 25th, 2020, on Christmas Day.
Is that the day that?
The court said, "One moment. When you say you had a meeting on Discord, are you talking about a video conference?"
The witness said, "It was audio."
The court said, "Go ahead."
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, how did Guo's meeting, the audio meeting on Discord about the closure of the farm? How did that meeting begin?
So Guo said in the previous 2 days. He said he will say something to us on the date of December 25th.
And did there come a time in the audio meeting that somebody asked Miles Guo a question?
Mr. Skirik said, "Objection."
Yes.
And what was the question that was asked?
Mr. Skirik said, "Objection. Hearsay."
The court said, "Overruled. You may answer."
Ms. Lee, what was the question that was asked of Miles Guo at the Discord meeting?
So in the first 9 minutes of the conference, a dentist from Himalaya asked how he want to handle with this money.
And what did you understand that the dentist was asking him for?
So he asked Miles Guo that he agreed with those monies, but that he asked for the refund.
And what did Miles Guo say after the dentist asked for a refund?
Mr. Skirik said, "Objection."
The court said, "You may answer."
He said this person is coming to make the interruption.
And what happened next after that, Ms. Lee?
So later he asked Guo Pin to kick him out.
And was the dentist kicked out after asking Miles Guo for a refund?
Yes.
What effect, if any, Ms. Lee, did it have on you to hear Miles Guo kick out the dentist after they asked for a refund?
I also want to ask the same question since I also make an investment in there as well.
And did you ask the question in that Discord meeting on Christmas Day?
After the dentist was kicked out and he was yelling at him, and I don't dare to make a voice.
Ms. Lee, what records, if any, do you have of this meeting with Miles Guo?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, "Your Honor, may I approach?"
The court said yes.
Ms. Lee, I've handed you an item that's been marked Government Exhibit VH-100, which contains Government Exhibits VH-10 and Government Exhibit VH-11. Have you seen this item before, Ms. Lee?
Yes, there is my signature with it.
And when did you see it?
This morning.
And what are the files that are on that item?
It shows the entire process where the Himalaya dentist was kicked out. Kick out.
And who made those files that are on that drive, Ms. Lee?
Myself.
Mr. Horton said, "Your Honor, Government Exhibits VH-10 and VH-11, we're not offering at this time. They are not yet translated. We do ask that the defense raise any authentication objections to those exhibits now."
Mr. Skirik said, "Your Honor, we haven't seen them in court. We haven't seen them shown to the witness to have her authenticate them. We know that the digital files are on the drive, but that's it. So I'm not sure how we could."
The court said, "So you'll step up."
Continued on next page. At sidebar.
The court said, "Are you asking that they be admitted subject to connection?"
Mr. Horton said, "So we had her authenticate them, and she saw what was on the drive, she saw that they, heard, rather, the audio clips. She testified that she made the audio clips and she knew what they were. And so we wanted to get that in the record and see if the defense had any objections as to authenticity. They are Mandarin audio clips. We're having them translated, they are not translated yet. And so we are not offering them at this time. We just wanted to see if there was an authenticity objection."
Mr. Finkel said, "This is further to what the parties and Your Honor discussed this morning before the jury entered. This is the second of 2 clips that we are just seeking to authenticate with the witness. And then once the parties have time to work through a translation, would then seek to offer it. so we just want to make sure there are no authenticity objections.
The court said, "Are you saying that you want to offer them after the witness has testified?"
Mr. Finkel said, "Yeah, later on in the trial, either through a stipulation of the parties as to translation or, if necessary, we'll put a translation expert on the stand."
The court said, "So you can ask any authentication questions without having heard the audio tapes."
Mr. Finkel said, "I should note the exhibits have been produced, so they have the exhibits."
Mr. Skirek said, "Okay. I'm not sure how the witness can authenticate audio files just by looking at a thumb drive. That's unclear to me, number one."
The court said, "So we can do the same thing that we did the last time, which is to have them played outside the hearing of the jury."
Mr. Horton said, "Your Honor, if I might. I believe I had elicited this, and if I didn't, I'm happy to do it now. I had elicited that she knew what was on the drive because she heard those files. When she heard them on the drive, she recognized them as the clips that she made of this meeting she testified about. And so I think that's sufficient for her to authenticate them."
The court said, "If he's going to raise the authentication objection, I'm going to have you play them for her. The question is just when."
Mr. Kamaraju said, "I think you can do it at the end of her direct. I don't know how much longer you have."
Mr. Horton said, "Not that much longer. Not that much longer."
Mr. Finkel said, "So, Your Honor, it's entirely up to you, and I think really more up to the defense. It's Mr. Gua's voice on them. And I guess what we would propose, subject to Your Honor's view, is after the direct we can play them. They can raise any authenticity objections at that point. And then the cross would begin."
The court said, "That's fine. We'll do it that way."
Mr. Finkel said, "Thank you."
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, "You may continue."
Mr. Horton said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, did there come a time that you made your own broadcasts?
Yes.
And what year was that?
2021, February 6, 2021.
What was the subject of the broadcast you made in February 2021?
It was talking about that all those leaders underneath Miles Gua, they all liars.
And who of the leaders underneath Miles Gua were you talking about?
Guapin, Leah.
Ms. Lee, does Leah go by any other names?
Mulan.
And who was Mulan?
So this is the same person as Leah, 2 names.
And who was Leah?
So this is the main translator of Miles Gua and company that is also the farm.
And what did you understand was Leah's role for Miles Gua?
So it's the same level as Sarah Wei.
And what, if anything, did you say about Miles Gua on these broadcasts in February of 2021?
Mr. Skirek said, "Objection."
The court said, "Overruled."
So in the beginning that I said those people I met are offline, they all lying.
And Ms. Lee, what, if anything, in your broadcasts in February 2021 did you say about Miles Gua?
Mr. Skirek said, "Objection." Asked and answered.
The court said, "Sustained."
Did there come a time, Ms. Lee, that you communicated directly with Miles Gua?
No.
When you were a follower of Miles Gua, Ms. Lee, did you use WhatsApp?
Yes.
Did you ever get or send a message to Miles Gua on WhatsApp?
It was when the farm was dismissed in December, that was the first time I sent him a message.
And what did you communicate to him in those WhatsApp messages?
So I communicate with him regarding the matter that offline leaders had some problem. And that this person is the liar.
And in those communications with Miles Gua, Ms. Lee, what, if anything, did you ask him for?
He just ignore me.
What, if anything, did you ask Miles Gua for in those communications, Ms. Lee?
Mr. Skirek said, "Objection." Asked and answered.
The court said, "Sustained."
Ms. Lee, what's H-coin?
So HB is also known as G-coin. It is the first letter from Gua, GUO.
And did there come a time that somebody asked you to buy G coin or H coin?
Many people.
And what year were you asked to buy G coin or H coin?
Mr. Skirik said, objection. Compound.
The court said, sustained.
What, if anything, Ms. Lee, did you understand was the relationship between G coin and H coin?
It is the same thing, and but later on changed to H coin.
And did you ultimately send money to somebody for H coin?
Yes.
And who did you send that money to for H coin?
Yongbing Zhang.
And who is Yongbing Zhang?
He is the farm owner of the Washington, D.C. farm.
And what, if anything, did you understand was the relationship between the owner of the D.C. farm and Miles Gua?
They are together.
How much money did you send to the D.C. farm leader for H coin?
A total amount is $5,700, plus $30 of a wire transfer fee.
And when was that, Ms. Lee?
Mr. Skirik said, asked and answered.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
2021.
And why did you agree to send $5,000 to the D.C. farm leader for H coin?
So after my live streaming and I got a lot of pressure, and so a lot of people pressured me to purchase it.
Ms. Lee, do you use Twitter?
Yes.
Did there come a time that you posted about Miles Gua on Twitter?
Yes.
And when did you first post about Miles Gua on Twitter?
It was on July 15, 2021, that was my first time.
And what did you post?
I don't recall now.
What was the subject that you were posting about?
This person is a liar.
And why did you post that Miles Gua was a liar in July 2021?
So it was when the dentist asked for refund and he got kicked out.
And you said that was in December 2020, Ms. Lee? Why did you post about it in July 2021?
Because I have a live streaming GTV for 41 or 42 days, I don't recall exactly.
And what's the connection between your live streaming on GTV and why you tweeted about Miles Gua being a liar in 2021?
Because GTV is Miles Gua's media. I don't dare to say something bad about him on there.
And what, if anything, changed in July 2021, where you dared to say something?
So either July 10th or July 11th of 2020, Miles Gua and the Lude, also known as Wan Tin Gong, they have a fight over it.
What do you mean they had a fight over it?
Lude, he used to live at Gua and Grace Place in New York.
Ms. Lee, since the July 2021 tweet you mentioned, how often, if ever, have you posted about Miles Gua?
I have always been doing that since then.
And what message, if any, have you intended to convey through those posts about Miles Gua since 2021?
So I want to tell many people, and also people who climbed the wall from China, don't keep putting money in here. This is organized mafia.
And when you say you want to tell people don't keep putting money in here, where do you not want them to keep putting their money?
The farms.
And who do you understand controls the farms?
Mr. Skirik said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
There are many farms underneath it.
And who do you understand, Ms. Lee, if anybody, the farms ultimately report to?
Mr. Skirik said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Have you followed this trial in the news, Ms. Lee?
Always.
And why have you been following this in the news?
So I want to see if a liar will be committed or charged.
And who is the liar you're referring to, Ms. Lee?
So Miles Gua, and also the farmers underneath him. And they collect the money. They are like a marketing layer, marketing schemes, and they are mafia.
Ms. Lee, I want to talk about the $20,000 you first invested in GTV. When, if ever, was any of that money refunded to you?
So the money was refunded to me in November of 2023 through ICBC, ICEC, SEC. Sorry.
And how much of your $20,000 that you first invested in GTV did you get back from the SEC?
It was 7.2 or 7.8% less.
And Ms. Lee, the $60,500 you invested in farm loans for GTV stock, did you get any GTV stock for that investment?
The interpreter said, sorry, is it 6,000?
Mr. Horton said, 60,500.
No.
What, if anything, did you get for that $60,500, Ms. Lee?
I didn't get anything.
Ms. Lee, for the $20,000 you invested in G clubs, how much, if any, GTV stock did you get for that?
Nothing.
And what, if anything, did you get for the $20,000 you spent on G clubs?
So in the new year of 2022, I receive a white box that looks very cheap. And so inside, I think there was a cup and also some cookies, but I throw it away.
Is that the only thing you got from G clubs, Ms. Lee?
Yes.
Ms. Lee, if you had known that you would not get any GTV stock, would you have given money to Miles Gwa?
Mr. Skirek said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said, sustained.
Ms. Lee, when you were a follower of Miles Gwa, what, if anything, did he say about what the CCP was doing to him?
So I don't really take his word seriously. But I hope China can be like United States, to be a free and democrat country and be a country with rule of law.
And Ms. Lee, when you were a follower of his, did you hear Miles Gwa say anything about what the CCP was doing to him?
Mr. Skirek said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Mr. Horton said, can I have one moment, Your Honor?
The court said yes.
Counsel conferred.
Ms. Lee, what is the total amount of money you invested to try to get GTV stock?
$100,500.
And that $100,000, where did you get it from?
So I got $10,000 I got from my home. But for rest of the money, I used the second mortgage for my home.
And Ms. Lee, other than the part that was refunded by the SEC, how much of that money do you have today?
I don't understand the question.
Other than what, other than the refund you got from the SEC? How much of the $100,000 you invested for GTV stock do you have today?
Mr. Skirek said, asked and answered.
The court said, you may answer.
The interpreter said, excuse me, I need to clarify.
So I didn't get anything back other than that I told Yongbing Zhang that I want the money back for $5,700.
And Ms. Lee, the money of yours that you didn't get back, where do you understand it is today?
Miles Gwa stole my money.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor. No further questions subject to what was discussed previously at sidebar.
The court said, members of the jury, we're going to take a brief pause at this time. Again, don't discuss the case.
Jury not present.
The court said, all righty. So you can go ahead and ask the foundational questions of the witness.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Loftus, if you can please pull up Government Exhibit VH-10. And with the audio on. If you could please play it.
Audio played.
Ms. Lee, what was that clip?
So this is on December 25, 2020, on the Discord platform that the dentist Himalaya asked for refund.
Mr. Horton said, and Ms. Loftus, can you please play VH-11?
Audio played.
Ms. Lee, what is that a recording of?
So on the first half it was the Himalaya ask for refund. The second half was Mr. Gwa. He was asking people, if you ask refund again, you will be kicked out.
And whose voices are heard on the clips?
The interpreter said, say that again?
I'm sorry, whose voices are heard on the clips?
So the person who was on the other voice is Gwa Pin, that's saying kick it out. And the other person is Miles Gwa's voice.
Miles Gwa's voice is on that recording?
Yes.
Is Miles Gwa's voice on both the two recordings we just played, VH-10 and VH-11?
Yes, both had Miles Gwa's voice.
The court said, What is the name of the dentist that you said was kicked out?
The witness said, so I don't exactly know her name is, but all the investors and also leaders online, they all use the online name.
The court said, go ahead.
The witness said, so Miles Gwa and also the owner of the farmers, they all know the names of investors. By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Lee, the dentist you said is on that recording, what name, if any, did she call herself?
Himalaya.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, at this point we'd ask if the defense has any objection as to authenticity.
The court said, Mr. Skirek.
Mr. Skirek said, no objection to authenticity, Your Honor.
The court said, how did you make the recordings?
The witness said, yes.
The court said, my question is, how did you make the recordings?
The witness said, I use my cell phone.
The court said, all right, so those recordings are admitted. But we need to indicate to the jury when the jury is present that they are admitted.
Mr. Skirek said, I believe all that was at issue is authentication, Your Honor, for now. And then the government indicated that they may later try to move them in through a different witness.
The court said, so you're not seeking to admit them?
Mr. Horton said, so, Your Honor, at this moment with the witness here, we wanted to address authenticity. The recordings include the defendant's statements, so they include party admissions. For the convenience of the court and the parties, what we're doing is getting them translated and we're going to.
Court said, oh yes, I forgot about the translation. Okay, so as far as the foundation, I find that it is adequate and the defense is not challenging it. But we are awaiting the translation before you move them into admission. Okay, so let's get the jurors back. Please.
Continued on next page. Jury present.
The court said, please be seated. Cross-examination.
Ms. Shrofa said, may we have a moment at sidebar?
The court said, yes, you may.
Ms. Shrofa said, thank you.
At the sidebar.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, I originally noticed somebody speaking to the government at the table. I wasn't quite sure who the person was. But I am reminded by my co-counsel that the person on the left side that was talking to the government, I think her name is Stephanie. She's an interpreter with whom we've had colossal trouble with. And we stopped using her at the MDC.
Mr. Kamraju said, we don't know if she was called by the court or...
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor asked that we get another interpreter. That's who we were able to get. I didn't know anything about her. If you don't want to use her, that's fine with us. I think this has been going okay in terms of efficiency, and we're happy to proceed however the court would like to. Apparently this interpreter is not.
Mr. Kamraju said, we just had her previously interpret for us at the jail. We had to stop using her because... whether it's a dialogue, dialect or whatever it is, they just don't understand each other.
The court said, all right, so we will not be using her.
Ms. Shrofa said, we just didn't want to start and...
The court said, understood.
Mr. Finkel said, thank you, Your Honor.
Continued on next page. In open court. Cross-examination. By Mr. Skirek.
Good afternoon, Ms. Lee.
Good afternoon.
Now you testified on direct that you've been following this trial closely, right?
I used to.
And you've been following the testimony of other witnesses at this trial?
I didn't have so much time to watch everything.
Well, my question was, have you followed the testimony of other witnesses? Not if she's followed everything.
Mr. Horton said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, what's good for the goose?
How else have you been following this trial, Ms. Lee?
I just look at the progress, nothing else.
And what sources are you consulting to check on the progress?
Twitter.
And what Twitter accounts in particular?
I forgot about my account.
You forgot about the account that you were following.
Oh, no. I want to. Can you please clarify your question, please?
Sure. My question is, what Twitter accounts have you been following?
Some government account and also journalists' accounts.
What journalists' accounts have you been following on Twitter?
There are 2 journalists, but I forgot the name. One's called Nation something.
Are they with newspaper outlets?
No.
Online website?
Can I ask you a question?
The court said no. You can only answer.
I don't know what you mean.
Have any of the Twitter accounts you've been following been associated with online publications?
No.
What government accounts on Twitter have you been following?
All the accounts that I report to that I follow them.
Can you be more specific?
Mr. Horton said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said you may answer.
FBI, Department of Justice, SEC, Homeland Security Bureau.
Your testimony is that the Homeland Security Bureau is posting about this trial on its Twitter account.
Mr. Horton said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Have you spoken to anyone who has attended trial, apart from the government lawyers?
Which trial?
The one that we're in now.
Yes.
Who have you spoken to?
I don't know this person's name.
How did this person contact you?
It was from my reported letter, FBI contact me.
So is it your testimony that the FBI agent who contacted you has been telling you what's happening at trial?
Mr. Horton said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
Mr. Skirek said, it's a clarification question, Your Honor. It's taken 3 questions to get here.
The court said, there have been many efforts of clarification questions.
Mr. Skirek said, thank you, Your Honor.
By Mr. Skirek.
Did the FBI agent you spoke to tell you about anyone who testified yesterday?
No.
Did the FBI agent that you've spoken to tell you about any other specific witness's testimony?
No.
Other than the FBI agent you just referred to. Has anyone else told you about witness testimony at this trial?
Mr. Horton said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Have you been following the NFSC's Twitter account of this trial?
Can you please explain what it is? What is the full name?
The New Federal State of China.
When?
My question is, have you followed the New Federal State of China's Twitter posts?
No.
Have you reviewed any of the transcripts of this trial?
I don't read too much English.
Has anyone reported to you on their review of the transcripts of this trial?
Mr. Horton said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, I'll allow the question.
No.
Have the government lawyers been updating you on any of the substance of this trial?
Which lawyer?
Any of them.
I don't know. I thought they are from the government.
Mr. Skirek said, I think we may have lost audio, Your Honor.
The court said, if you'll just repeat the answer.
The interpreter said, I don't know. I thought they are from the government.
Mr. Skirek said, I'm sorry. Could I just have the interpreter repeat it one more time?
The interpreter said, I don't know. I thought they are from the government.
By Mr. Skirek.
Can you point to at counsel's table who you believe is from the government?
These 3. I met with them before.
Okay. Have any of those people that you identified told you anything about the substance of this trial up until today?
No.
Okay. Now you've met with the government's lawyers in this case 8 times to prepare for your testimony today, correct?
Yes.
8 times plus again this morning, correct?
I don't remember exactly how many times, but on the video call, was maybe 2 or 3 times.
Okay. And when you met with them, you provided information to them, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you met with them, they told you that you had to tell them the truth, correct?
Yes.
And you did, right?
All I'm saying here is that I was cheated. That's all my experience.
Mr. Skirek said, move to strike as non-responsive, Your Honor.
Mr. Horton said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said, sustained. The answer is stricken.
When you met with the government lawyers before today, you told them the truth, correct?
All I'm saying is true.
Okay. Ms. Lee, you moved to the United States about 20 years ago, right?
Yes.
And you testified on direct that you encountered Mr. Gov't on social media around 2017, right?
Yes.
And that was on YouTube, correct?
In the beginning, also on YouTube.
Okay. And I believe you testified on direct that you first heard of Mr. Gov't when he did an interview with Voice of America. Right.
Yes.
That interview was in April of 2017.
April 19th.
Thank you. But you first heard about the video in July of 2017, is that right?
No.
When did you first hear about the Voice of America video?
It is April 19th, 2017. You just said only 2017.
Ms. Lee, you were initially skeptical of Mr. Gov't, is that correct?
I didn't have feeling whatsoever.
Didn't you tell the government that you thought that wealthy, rich people in China must be related to the Chinese government?
I didn't say that.
Now did a point in time come when you joined a Discord group to connect with the movement after seeing the Voice of America interview?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified on direct that you donated $6,000 to the Rule of Law Foundation, is that correct?
I don't recall the exact number, but I have receipts.
Well, you donated money to the Rule of Law Foundation, correct?
Yes, I donated money to Rule of Law Foundation.
And was it, in your view, a substantial amount of money?
Of course. That's a big amount.
And in fact, did you tell the government that it was a financial hardship to donate that amount of money?
This is not a one-time donation. I didn't say that.
So let's talk about the total.
Mr. Horton said, "Is there a question pending?"
The court said, "Is there a question?"
Mr. Skirek said, "I thought there was." But the question is, with respect to the total amount of money that was donated to the Rule of Law Foundation. What did the witness tell the government that was a financial hardship to donate that amount?
Mr. Horton said, "Objection, form."
The court said, "Sustained."
By Mr. Skirek.
Ms. Lee, what's your best estimate of how much you donated in total to the Rule of Law Foundation?
About 6,000.
So if we assume it was $6,000 that you donated, would you consider that a financial hardship to donate that amount of money?
Mr. Horton said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, "I'm going to allow the question."
So sorry. I just said earlier, this is not the only donation that I put into.
The court said, "You got your answer."
Was there more than $6,000?
Mr. Horton said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, "Sustained." Don't answer.
Ms. Lee, did you tell the government that your donation to the Rule of Law Foundation was a financial hardship?
Mr. Horton said, "Objection, Your Honor." Asked and answered.
The court said, "Sustained." Asked and answered. Don't ask again.
Now isn't it true that you were motivated to donate to the Rule of Law Foundation in part because of the protests in Hong Kong?
Yes.
And you told the government that the students reminded you of your child?
Yes.
And when the government lawyer asked you what your motivation for donating to the Rule of Law was on direct, you didn't identify those motivations, did you?
Can you please explain?
Government lawyer asked you earlier today what your motivation was for donating to the Rule of Law Foundation. Right.
So it's not a motivation. It was pushed by Miles Gov't because he said he is going to donate $100 million and his family is going to donate $1 billion to help. I want to donate money as well to help those children in Hong Kong.
I understand that that's the answer you gave earlier today.
Mr. Horton said, "Objection, Your Honor."
And my question now is,
The court said, "Overruled."
why, when you answered earlier today, you didn't identify these other motivations that we just talked about?
What is the motivation?
Happy to have the court reporter read it back. But I believe you testified that part of your motivation was.
The court said, "Perhaps it's the language that you're using, counsel. Perhaps you might try a different word."
One of the reasons that you donated to the Rule of Law Foundation was because of the protests in Hong Kong and the fact that the protesting students reminded you of your child. Correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection to form.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Not exactly.
So you're changing your answer from earlier.
Mr. Horton said, objection.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
I don't understand what you're talking about.
Are you having any trouble with the interpreter, ma'am?
I understand her, but please try to explain.
Mr. Skirek said, I'll move on, Your Honor. Ms. Lee, I'd like to talk about your investment in GTV, okay?
Yes.
You heard about the opportunity to invest in GTV from Lude Media, right?
I also saw it from Milesgwa.
Mr. Skirek said, Your Honor, can we direct the witness to answer the question, please?
Mr. Horton said, object to that, Your Honor. She did answer the question.
The court said, so try to limit your answer to the question that is being asked. So for example, if the question is, what is your favorite color? And you answer my favorite color is blue. You don't then say, my favorite dessert is ice cream. Just stick to the question.
By Mr. Skirek.
So you first heard about the opportunity to invest in GTV from a Lude Media broadcast online, right?
No.
What is Lude Media?
So it is the earliest media that doing propaganda for Milesgwa, so it's his self-media.
Mr. Skirek said, Your Honor, it's the same issue. It's a non-responsive answer.
Mr. Horton said, object to that, Your Honor.
The court said, you'll step up.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, I don't know if she has a limitation as far as understanding questions, or if she simply is resisting questions. This is the witness. She has her way of answering. And I have tried to get her to answer questions clearly, but I don't know how far you can get with her. Is there some instruction that you want me to give, sir?
Mr. Skirek said, Your Honor, I think if the witness continues to give non-responsive answers, I would ask the court to continue to give the instruction that she directly answer questions. I think we've all heard that she either, for perhaps either reason Your Honor has articulated, whatever it is. We're not getting responsive answers to the questions. She had no problem with Mr. Horton on direct. But we're now having all kinds of trouble on cross.
Mr. Horton said, well.
The court said, my goodness. I think she's rather consistent.
Mr. Horton said, if I could be heard.
Mr. Kumraju said, I just have one. Another option that Your Honor has already employed is that we may ask again to move to strike testimony again if it's non-responsive. Just flagging that as another possibility.
The court said, of course. That would perhaps refer to 2/3 of her testimony.
Mr. Kumraju said, okay, Your Honor. She's not my witness.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor did, for the record, the last question answered. The last answer was responsive to Mr. Skirek's question. He may not have liked the color that she added. But the color was, her answer included her view on his relationship with Milesgwa. That's a responsive answer. Even if it's not a favorable one.
Ms. Shrofa said, the added color is what makes it non-responsive.
Mr. Horton said, the witness is not obligated to give you a terse answer. She can say what the question calls for in her mind that was responsive. Who is this person? That's a fair response. That's a responsive answer.
The court said, so do you have an application?
Ms. Shrofa said, I think we'll move to strike the last answer, and we'll just see how it goes going forward, Your Honor.
The court said, so I just want to go back and review the transcript to see whether I'm going to strike it or not.
Mr. Skirek said, thank you.
Pause.
The court said, a member of my staff tells me that they heard juror number 4 state that the interpreter has made some errors, but they're not significant.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, our client did point out that the interpreter had made some errors as well. But since in our judgment the errors weren't significant, so to speak, we didn't interrupt the proceedings. So, it's not inconsistent.
The court said, I just wanted this to be on the record in case anyone had something to say about it.
Mr. Kumraju said, I'm just curious, Your Honor, and maybe we have to ask, and don't know the answer to this. But did the juror say this to another juror member?
The court said no. The juror made the comment to a member of my staff.
Mr. Kumraju said, "Oh, okay. Understood. Understood."
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor. I think Your Honor instructed the jurors during voir dire that they are to use only the translator. So we believe that has been addressed, and there's nothing further.
Mr. Kumraju said, "We're fine, Your Honor."
Ms. Shrofa said, We don't need another instruction, Your Honor. It's fine.
Mr. Kumraju said, "Obviously we can take it up again if there's an issue, but we're fine right now."
The court said okay.
In open court.
The court said, so the objection is sustained. I want to remind the witness that if you're asked a specific question, you must only answer that specific question.
The witness said, yes.
The court said, so if the attorney asks you what day of the week was yesterday, and let us say your answer is yesterday was Monday, you cannot add, it was a sunny day or that it was raining. You must stick to the question. Go ahead.
Mr. Skirik said, and Your Honor, the motion to strike.
The court said, the answer is stricken.
Mr. Skirik said, thank you, Judge.
By Mr. Skirik.
You first learned about the potential GTV investment in April of 2020, right?
Yes.
And I believe you testified on direct examination that you watched Mr. Gua's videos all the time, right?
Yes.
Okay. You said 5 to 6 days a week, I believe, correct?
Yes.
And you heard Mr. Gua talk about the GTV private placement before you invested, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you about who you communicated with directly. And what I mean by directly is one-to-one, okay?
Can you please explain?
Directly means, in the way that I'm using it, to have a direct conversation. A first-person conversation or communication. Does that make sense?
You mean about investment?
Generally. So when I say directly, I am excluding from my question anything that didn't include the person you were communicating with in the one-on-one. Does that make sense?
The court said, so are you saying that you want her to exclude any group conversation?
Mr. Skirik said, no, Your Honor. Let's try it this way. You never spoke with Mr. Gua directly about your investment before you made it, right?
Yes.
You communicated with Sarah Wei, correct?
About investment?
Investment in GTV, yes.
Yes.
Okay. And Sarah Wei was with VOG, correct?
Yes.
And she was a farm leader of the Phoenix farm, right?
Yes.
And you got all of your instructions for investing in GTV from Sarah Wei, right?
No.
Mr. Skirik said, can we please pull up what's in evidence as VH7? Do you remember this document, Ms. Lee?
This is the money, the check for the investment.
What's the date of this check?
It is written April 12th, but it was wrong. It should be May 12th.
Okay. But it says April 12th, correct?
Yes.
And you wrote this check, right?
Yes.
And I believe you testified on direct that the name on this check, Changfu Wang, is your husband, right?
Yes.
And you sent this check to VOG, correct?
Well, Voice of Gua Media.
And who told you where to send this check?
Miles Gua said if it's less than $100,000, that it's mailed to Voice of Gua Media, and that is in charge by Sarah Wei.
Who provided the address?
The address was sent by Li Hongwei.
Do you know someone by the name of Guobing?
Yes.
Who is Guobing?
So Guobing is the person in charge to collect money for Sarah Wei, Li Hongwei.
Okay. And Li Hongwei is Sarah Wei.
Li Hongwei is Sarah Wei.
And Guobing worked for Sarah Wei, correct?
This person worked for both Miles Gua and Sarah Wei.
Now I believe you testified that in addition to this $10,000 check, you sent 2 $5,000 bank transfers, is that right?
Yes.
Were those sent before or after the check?
Before.
And Sarah Wei provided you with the account to transfer that money to electronically, right?
I don't recall exactly. It was either Guobing or Sarah Wei, either one of them.
Okay. And it was your understanding that Sarah controlled the account that you transferred this money to. Correct?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you never participated in any discussions between Mr. Gov't and Sarah Wei about your transfers of money for the GTV investment?
Can you please explain?
You never had any discussions with, strike that. Withdrawn. You testified earlier that Sarah Wei or Guobing were the ones who provided you with the wire transfer information. Right.
Yes.
And that the accounts that you transferred the money to were controlled by Ms. Wei.
Yes.
Mr. Gov't didn't participate in any of those discussions with Ms. Wei, correct?
Can you please? I don't quite understand your question.
The court said, so when you were communicating with Sarah, when you had contact with Sarah, was Miles Gov't part of that contact, part of that conversation?
The witness said, no.
And you never heard Mr. Gov't tell Ms. Wei where investors should send money, right?
No.
If Mr. Gov't gave Ms. Wei any directions, withdrawn. You don't know whether Sarah Wei was following any instructions that she got from Mr. Gov't, correct?
The court said, one moment. There just seems to be a noise coming from somewhere, but it's not one that we control. We've asked the facilities department to look into that. In the meantime, jurors, you can hear the witness and the attorney?
The juror said, yes.
The court said, I see they're saying yes, and so you may go ahead.
Mr. Skirek said, I believe there was a question pending, Your Honor.
The court said, okay. So I'd like the reporter to please read back the question.
Record read.
So I know that the Miles would give the instructions to receive that 2,000 shares for the shareholders. For the GTV shareholders.
Let's try it this way. You testified that you weren't involved in any discussions between Mr. Gov't and Ms. Wei. Correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, overruled. You may continue. What's the question?
Mr. Skirek said, I believe the translator just translated it.
The court said, no. You said you testified. And then you did not ask a question after that.
Mr. Skirek said, does the court reporter have a question? I thought I asked a question, but perhaps I.
Record read.
The court said, I didn't hear the correct. So yes, go ahead. You can answer that question.
No.
No meaning you weren't involved, correct?
Participate in what?
Conversations, ma'am, between Mr. Gov't and Ms. Wei.
So on the live streaming that Gov't signed that way to collect the money.
Mr. Skirek said, move to strike as non-responsive.
The court said, the answer is stricken. Move on.
Any instructions Mr. Gov't gave to Ms. Wei when you weren't a party to the conversation? You have no idea if she followed those instructions, right?
The way you asked me the question, I don't know how to answer.
Ma'am, are you understanding the interpreter okay?
The court said, the interpreter needs to pose that question to the witness.
Yes.
Mr. Gov't didn't tell you what accounts to send money to, right?
So he didn't tell me which account, but he.
The interpreter said, excuse me. Sorry.
So he said that in the live streaming. He said for the amount of money that's less than $100,000 that Li Hongwei will collect for Voice of Gov't Media.
Did he give you account numbers, ma'am?
No.
The only people who gave you account numbers were Sarah Wei or Guobing, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now you testified earlier that you made a loan through the Phoenix Farm, correct?
Yes.
Between September and November of 2020, correct?
Yes.
And Sarah Wei founded the Phoenix Farm, correct?
It was Miles Gov't that assigned her to establish the farm.
She established the farm, correct?
The interpreter said, excuse me?
She established the farm, correct?
Yes.
And Sarah encouraged supporters to send money to her farm, correct?
Can you please repeat?
Sarah Wei encouraged supporters to send money to the Phoenix Farm, correct?
Can I say something?
The court said, just answer the question.
Yes.
Okay. And in making the loan, you coordinated with Sarah or Guobing, correct?
Yes.
On Discord, correct?
Yes.
Over email too.
Yes.
And you followed Sarah's instructions to make the loan, correct?
Yes.
And you did what she told you to do, right?
Yes.
And you didn't send any money to Miles Guo for the farm loan, right?
Yes.
And it was your understanding that the farm loan would entitle you to both interest on the loan and GTV stock. Is that right?
Yes.
And that understanding was based on a loan agreement that you signed, correct?
Yes.
And you did sign a loan agreement with the Phoenix Farm.
I signed the agreement, but they didn't sign it back.
Did you review the loan agreement carefully before you sent it?
I didn't review it carefully, because I trust Miles Guo and Sarah Wei.
Did you discuss it with your husband?
Mr. Horton said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
No.
Where is that loan agreement?
Can you please repeat?
Do you have any copy of the loan agreement?
Yes.
Did you provide a copy of that agreement to the government?
What I provide to the government, I send it through email and also the regular mail.
Okay. So just to clarify, your testimony is that you sent your farm loan agreement. A copy of your farm loan agreement to the government, correct?
I did send it.
Now is the Phoenix Farm identified as the borrower on your farm loan agreement?
Let me think.
Take your time.
Because it was a long time ago. I think it should be Phoenix Farm. Oh, no, it's not. No.
Okay. Did there come a time when you learned that Mr. Guo and Sarah Wei had a falling out?
Yes.
And that was toward the end of 2020?
Yes.
And do you know, was it your understanding that Ms. Wei was accused of mishandling farm loan funds?
Mr. Horton said, "Object. Lack of foundation."
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Can you please repeat the question?
Is it your understanding that Sarah Wei was accused of mishandling farm loan funds?
You mean from my understanding, right?
Correct.
My understanding in the very beginning is Sarah Wei and Miles Guo, they are working together.
Mr. Skirik said, move to strike as non-responsive, Your Honor.
The court said, the answer is stricken. Pay careful attention to the question before you answer.
The witness said, okay.
Is it your understanding that Sarah Wei was accused of mishandling farm loan funds?
Yes.
And Mr. Guo was unhappy about that, right?
Mr. Horton said, "Objection."
The court said, overruled. You may answer as to whether you observed him unhappy.
I didn't observe that he was not happy.
Ultimately, Sarah Wei left the Phoenix Farm, right?
That was a communication platform.
Mr. Skirik said, I'm sorry. Could I just ask the interpreter to repeat that?
The interpreter said, that was a communication platform.
The court said, that was a communication platform. That's the answer.
The interpreter said, yes.
By Mr. Skirik.
Did a point in time come when Ms. Wei was no longer involved with the farms?
Because this is not what's going on.
Mr. Skirik said, move to strike, Your Honor.
The court said, the answer is stricken.
Same question, did a time come when Sarah Wei was no longer involved with the farms?
She had been participating in the matter.
Mr. Skirik said, move to strike, Your Honor.
The court said, the answer is stricken.
Were many people upset with Sarah Wei at the end of 2020?
Mr. Horton said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, one moment. You can state whether you observed other people upset with Sarah Wei.
When the farm was dismissed.
So is that yes, people were upset with Sarah Wei when the farm was dismissed?
It's not that they are upset, because they want money.
And Sarah didn't give it to them, right?
I'm not sure. She didn't give me the money.
And you were upset with her, right?
Yes.
And a lot of people were upset with her, right?
That's right.
Okay. Now you testified on direct about some protests that you were involved in, right?
Yes.
And there was a protest in Texas, right?
Yes.
And there was a protest in Hawaii, correct?
Yes.
And there was a protest in Los Angeles, correct?
Yes.
And you participated in each of these protests, right?
Yes.
The protest in Texas, you understood that the movement was protesting a person named Bob Fu, correct?
Yes.
Sometimes called Pastor Fu, correct?
Yes.
And at the time you believed that Fu was a CCP operative, right?
No.
At the time you did not believe that Pastor Fu was a CCP operative.
Mr. Horton said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, sustained. Don't translate the question. The objection is sustained.
Why did you go?
Miles Gwa said he was the CCP spy.
But you didn't believe that.
Whatever he said at that time, I believed him.
Didn't you just testify that you didn't believe that Pastor Fu was a CCP spy?
What you just asked me earlier is not what that meant.
Ma'am, which is it? Did you believe he was a spy when you participated in the protest or not?
So Miles Gwa took out that he holds like a law permit at CCP and to tell us that he was the spy.
Mr. Skirrick said, move to strike, Your Honor.
The court said, the answer is stricken.
Ma'am, my question is, what did you believe?
I believed what Miles Gwa said at that time.
Okay. And the protest against Bob Fu took place around October of 2020, right?
Yes.
In Texas.
Yes.
And you went there to protest for the people from the Phoenix farm, right?
Yes.
And in Texas, Sarah Way led that protest, correct?
I don't know how to answer this question.
Who that was in Texas was the leader of the protest?
There were 3 people.
3 people in Texas.
3 person that direct the protest.
Again, in Texas.
Yes.
Okay. Who were those 3 people?
It's Long Island and also Texas cowboy. I don't know the exact name. Wen Lai, PH, is also called Ting Feng Chin, PH. Ocean, Chin Chi Shin, PH.
I believe that was more than 3 people, correct?
The way you ask, please wait. The way you ask, please wait. Let me think.
Of course.
So Miles Gwa said on GTV that we send 20 people, and Bob Fu said that we need to send more people.
Mr. Skirrick said, Your Honor, move to strike.
The court said, the answer is stricken. You just said that there were some people who were leaders. Is there a number of people? Can you tell us the number of leaders?
The witness said, yes. 3 or 4. By Mr. Skirrick.
In Texas.
Yes.
I got Sarah Way, I got Long Island David, and I got Texas Cowboy, am I right so far?
So Texas cowboy, Chin Chi Shin, Shi Wang Wang, PH. That's all I know.
The court said very well.
Mr. Skirrick said, was there?
The court said, we have come to the end of our work today. Members of the jury, you'll return to court tomorrow as usual. Ready to come into the courtroom at 9:30. Remember, do not discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't permit others to discuss it in your presence. Don't read, watch, listen to anything concerning this case from any source. Have a good evening.
Jury not present.
The court said, ma'am, you must return to court tomorrow to be ready to walk into the courtroom by 9:29. Do not discuss the case. You are excused. You may step out.
Witness not present.
The court said, you may be seated. Do the parties have anything before we stop for today?
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, just a question for defense counsel, Mr. Skirrick. Just approximately how much time do they believe they have left on cross with Misley? So we can evaluate scheduling and things like that.
Mr. Skirrick said, that's a tough one, Your Honor. It certainly depends in large part on the witness. I would say I probably have at least, another hour, hour and a half. And we'll confer and get back to the government on this.
The court said, confer. That's a good idea.
Mr. Skirik said, certainly.
Mr. Finkel said, I'm sorry. Did I hear an hour, hour and a half?
The court said, that's what he said.
Mr. Finkel said, okay.
The court said, anything further?
Mr. Kumraju said, just one brief thing, Your Honor. I don't believe we received production of a farm loan agreement for the witness which the witness testified she provided to the government. So we just ask for production of that.
The court said, did she turn over a farm loan agreement to the government?
Mr. Finkel said, so, Your Honor, sitting here today, I don't know. What I do know is what we received from her. We produced. We'll double-check, make sure everything was provided. It's possible she sent it to a different government agency, like HSI, Homeland Security, or the SEC. We don't know. But if we have it, we'll produce it.
Mr. Kumraju said, thank you.
The court said, very well. Thank you.
Adjourned to June 5, 2024, at 9 a.m.